Hey Brooklyn, it's Dr. Scott. I have some feedback for you on your visual analysis draft. Just as a quick reminder of what I'm looking for in this assignment, I'm looking for a thesis statement that's focused, that's clear, that makes an argument about two of the floodwall murals, and it has strong supporting reasons. And supporting reasons, like for a paper of this size, you can kind of think of that as like the body paragraphs. So the body paragraphs, do they provide, are they a good support for the paper's overall argument? I'm also looking for supporting details, using good details from the murals to back up your point of view, and also explain how those details back up your point of view. Also looking at organization and transitions, like how you're moving from one idea to another. Paraphrases, you need to integrate two paraphrases into your writing. Also looking at MLA format, integrating a visual into your writing and writing a paragraph without any be verbs in it, or trying to do that. So what I did is I read through your essay a couple times, and I think I'll talk a little bit about organization, but I think I'm going to focus mostly on the thesis statement and supporting details. So I thought your thesis statement was right in here. Try to show the different side of Portsmouth that is not discussed. Robert Dafford demonstrates these messages through body language, colors, illustration, and where the murals are placed. So I kind of know, this tells me what the individual body paragraphs are going to be about, I think. But as far as like what your paper's argument is, I don't really get that until, I feel like I don't really get that until I get to the end. Where we have, there was like one sentence that I thought really kind of summed it up. Yeah, here it is. That seems to be your argument. Like the murals do not do a very good job showing black history in the community, or it does a shitty job of showing black history in the community. I'm there for that argument. Like I want to hear that. That's a refreshing argument. I don't hear that enough. I'm getting a little sick and tired of like, this is a town that just kind of picks itself up by its bootstraps, that kind of thing. There's some problems with, I think, with some of the murals, and I like that you've got that critique. But your thesis statement is kind of bearing the lead. I think this might be your thesis statement, but it's not just like the murals are not showing a history. It's that, like, I think in your body paragraphs you're trying to say that like the way that they're going about, like the way that they're representing race in those murals, there's problems with that, which doesn't, which I think is good, but it needs to be much clearer in that thesis statement. So this right here, it feels like trying to show the different side of Portsmouth. Like I think you need to be clear like what that is. It's really vague. That is not discussed. It demonstrates these messages. Like kind of come out there and say it. Like you don't think the murals do a good job of showing race, or there's a critique that you have about how race is represented in the murals. Like cool, come out and say that. Right now it's not there. It's kind of buried, and I kind of have to piece it together as I'm reading. Once you have that kind of figured out, like within the body paragraphs, like I'm kind of fine like how they're set up, but it's like within the body paragraphs I'm not seeing enough connection between things that you're discussing in the paragraph and the paper's overall argument. And I think part of the issue is figuring out exactly what the paper's overall argument is so that you have something to connect body paragraphs to. So make sure that you're kind of paying attention. Don't try to rush through and say, oh yeah, this is what my argument is. I mean, I said that sentence at in the conclusion was probably was the clearest sense that I had of what the paper's overall argument is. That doesn't mean you just copy that sentence and you move it to the introduction as your thesis statement. Think through what you're really trying to argue here. These two murals, are they showing race in a negative way? Are they not going far enough to talk about poor race relations in Portsmouth? Do they hint at racial problems in the community, but really never make it front and center? I feel like that last one, that is kind of the argument in places. Like when I think about the Bessie Tomlin mural, like I kind of felt like you were trying to say that, but you never kind of came out and say it. So figuring out what the paper's overall argument is, like spend some time with that. Ask me questions, brainstorm, visit the writing center about that. Then the task is to make sure that the paragraphs are all kind of helping you support that. And so within those body paragraphs, like we have here, we're taking a look at placement of the mural. Let's see, there was a part of this that I thought was interesting, but you're not really kind of explaining it. Dafford chose to focus his attention on a different area of the flood, which made me as a viewer pay less attention to that part of the mural. I think you're trying to say something there about like what he's putting front and center, and in terms of race. And so I think you're trying to say that, you know, he should have made Bessie Tomlin the one person that died as a result of the flood. She should have been front and center, but instead we have that, you know, it's kind of like, of all the things that happened in Portsmouth during the 1937 flood, oh yeah, a black lady died. It felt like you were trying to make that kind of critique, but you're kind of hinting at it. You're not coming out and saying it. So right in there, like, what are you really trying to say there? There are other places where I saw that in the essay. So right in here, placement was very important to mural because it instantly makes you think about the entire mural as a whole. I'm not following you there. I mean, you can kind of go into the body paragraphs and kind of explain yourself a little bit more, but I honestly think, Brooklyn, right now the job is to kind of go back and say, what is my paper trying to argue, and being really clear about that, and then going back to these body paragraphs and asking yourself, is that what this body paragraph is really trying to do? Is all the writing in here, is it all supporting that argument that I have about race and how it's represented in these two murals? If there's writing that doesn't really kind of help you do that, it needs to go. If you can connect it to that argument, explain that connection. I think that that is like the big next step for the essay. What's the argument, and then can you connect the writing that you have here to that overall argument? Other things I just kind of wanted to comment on, the Greyhound mural. I think about that mural all the time. It definitely shows isolation, and I think that you're describing that. You're not using that kind of language, but you talk about a sense of rejection. He's definitely different. He's definitely placed differently. He's represented differently than the other people in the mural. So again, the feedback that I had about where the overall argument is, that really kind of became clear to me that that is what needed to happen, because we kind of get to hear it's just like, yeah, they both give off a negative message, and I'm not sure that that's, I think you need to be a bit more specific than that. Like what exactly are the murals saying about race? What are they not saying about race? I think that a much clearer message about how you're seeing race represented in the murals needs to come out. It needs to be evident in the next revision. And so one area where I was like, I'm not sure like what the paper's overall point is. Like we have this like emotion discussion at the end of Bessie Tomlin. Towards the end of this paragraph, it's talking about the emotions that are kind of conveyed, but through the body language, which is great eye for detail and all that. That's great, but I wasn't sure like how that related to the paper's overall argument. So to kind of recap, one, clarify like what are you really trying to argue here, and I'd be happy to help you out with that. I also think visiting the writing center could help. Clarify the connection between the paragraphs and the paper's overall argument. So once you decide like, all right, my paper is going to argue this about these two murals in terms of how race is represented, great. Then make sure that the paragraphs are helping to support that, and make sure that you're explaining your details in terms of that paragraph's overall point. I think rethinking the organization, I don't think just kind of starting with, hey, I noticed this first and then this thing second. I think that you can do a lot better than that, because what you notice first and what you notice second really has nothing to do with your paper's argument. Maybe taking a look at where like it was most like the clearest example to you that there's a problem here in how the murals are representing race. Like, okay, maybe you start there. I rethink the organization. If you stick with what you have, I guess I'll be all right with it. But I think that you can do better than that. There's also paraphrases need to be integrated a visual, get the verbs out of a paragraph and make sure that your MLA formatting is where it needs to be. But right here, this is where that's the big issue right now. All right, Brooklyn, that's it for now. If you got questions, please let me know. Thanks a bunch.